Tainted Grail, the Fall of Avalon has finally clambered out the early access dungeon with its 1.0 release thrown upon us, and it does so with sword in hand, sticking the middle finger up at the Oblivion Remaster. What we've got here is a proper RPG, darker, moodier, and pound for pound a far tastier package than the Bethesda re-release. Now look, us gamers, we love to root for the underdog. We want the little dev studios to thrive, but there's a new dilemma brewing, and it ain't for the devs. Instead, it's for us so-called content creators. That's because if the Oblivion Remaster, a glorified museum exhibit with new lipstick, can swagger off with 8s and 9s from the YouTube creators and the trade press, then what in the hell are we supposed to score a game like Tainted Grail? That's because it's not perfect. It has its issues for sure, but it's more ambitious, more atmospheric, and has more balls than most AAA titles I've played this year. So put the kettle on, grab a cuppa, and let's discuss this and more in today's review. Right, full disclosure before we get going, the lovely lot over at Awaken Realms reached out and threw me an early review code of their 1.0 release of Tainted Grail, giving me a full week to poke around the dark corners of Avalon before it hit the public shelves. But that's not all, they also offered to send me over their physical collector's edition, which is worth around €225 or so. That's right, big boy loot. My assumption is other content creators got offered the same, so I share that with you out of pure transparency in mind. So before anyone kicks the boot in, let me be crystal clear. This has zero impact on my opinion. They didn't ask for a glowing review. They didn't threaten to send the Black Plague my way if I slagged it off. I call it like I see it. And secondly, whilst my playthrough is pretty close to what you will receive, questing, looting, getting lost, dying in embarrassing ways, there may still be a few minor tweaks by the time it's fully live. So just bear that in mind when viewing this footage. Right, let's kick things off then with the story, and there's no spoilers here, fear not, I'm not a total twat. Loosely put, some geezer named King Arthur, yes, that King Arthur, decided to go full colonial and invade a place called Avalon, and in classic British fashion, it all went tits up. After everything collapsed, a nasty little plague called the Red Death swept across the land like a worst hangover you've ever had. Grim, bleak, and very much not here for a laugh. Now you, the brave little adventurer, wake up and set off across this moody mess of a world, guided by the faint memory of old Arthur and the hope of sticking it all back together again. Along the way, you'll trip over monsters, magical hotspots, and more moral dilemmas than a priest in a brothel. What path you choose, that's up to you, mate. And let me say, this ain't your bubbly, whimsical RPG where every tavern's full of singing elves or talking frogs. No, Tainted Grail is proper serious, desperate and bleak. It's gritty, and most of that tone oozes through the voice acting, which I'll get onto later when we talk sound. But if you ever wanted a version of Oblivion that grew up, went through a messy divorce and took up chain smoking in a trench coat, then this is it. Now fair's fair, the story ain't perfect. The opening couple of hours, bit of a slog, truth be told. You start off in a prison cell and my heart sank as I could already hear the Oblivion alarm bells ringing, thinking this was going to be an outright copycat. But thankfully, Tainted Grail finds its own feet. Push through that sluggish opening and you'll be rewarded with a rich narrative full of twists, turns and big fantasy words that you won't have a clue about, which brings us nicely onto the world of Avalon, a place both beautiful and grim. Now let's get this out the way first, the map size. Yeah, it's smaller than your average big budget RPG. We're not talking Skyrim level vistas here, but honestly, that's not a problem. In fact, I welcomed it. The more compact layout meant I actually learned where I was going for once. I got to know the landmarks, the shortcuts, the murder spots. What's more, the world feels more densely populated versus just having open stretches of field and rock as filler. Eventually you'll get a horse, and I think this thing is actually cursed. Not by dark magic, no, cursed by game design. It's the only mountain game in history that gave me motion sickness. I fought undead dead monstrosities without flinching, but 5 minutes on that clunky glue factory reject and I was ready to hurl my innards out. So yeah, I trotted it about old school on my own 2 feet, and honestly I preferred it that way because the sense of exploration in Tainted Grail felt far more rewarding than other RPGs given the quickness of your discoveries. You'll stumble across all manner of things, constantly keeping you interested. One minute I'm finding a hidden cave in a lake of blood, the next I'm at an ethereal style garden trying to pass some trial. But here's the bit to not be concerned about. Whilst the map is small, yes, that's what she said, it ain't the whole shebang. You'll soon clock that it's built with interconnected zones. Each area is almost like a new chapter of the story, stitched together as you move through it. Imagine Baldur's Gate 3 if you want to get a feel for how that looks and how big the game actually is. Now look, no proper fantasy RPG is complete without some banging sights and atmospheric sounds, right? It's the bread and butter of the game, and Tainted Grail, well, I'd say it's served up with a fat slab of butter, but a rusty old dagger for spreading it. You'll stumble across some downright gorgeous views, an eerie cemetery, a carved out rock formation, forgotten ruins, and huge landmarks as a backdrop to a city ravaged by the plague. There's proper lore baked into every crumbling brick too. Read a plaque on a statue, boom, you'll get a stat boost. Examine a shrine, boom, more stats coming your way. It's the kind of world that whispers secrets at you and encourages you to go seek it all out. Those towns and cities, structurally they're decent, well crafted, weathered and dripping in that Knights of Fouled Here energy. But here is the issue, just like with the Oblivion Remaster, they still feel a bit empty. Sure, there's a few more poor sods wandering around, but it still feels like everyone's waiting on you to exist. You're not entering their lives, they're just cardboard cutouts waiting for your arrival like a bad surprise party. And rarely, if ever, have I seen NPCs interact with each other, all as if looking at their grinder app nervous on who it is that they are meeting. I would have loved to have overheard some juicy background chatter, you know, walk past a couple of NPCs mid-row about who nicked whose goat, or eavesdrop on a cult meeting arguing over robe sizes, something, anything. Instead, the town sometimes feels like a stage built just for you, and whilst that might sound flattering, it kills a bit of the immersion. Still, what's there looks the part, and the art style is pretty bang on. Right, let's talk about the next big ticket item, and for me, it's one of Tainted Grail's biggest missed opportunities. A real kick in the bollocks, truth be told, the combat. And I hate saying that because this should have been a home run. Now don't get me wrong, there's good stuff here. First off, the game does let you build a character that fits your playstyle. Fancy a tanky brute with a sword thicker than Ron Jeremy's? Go for it. Prefer flinging spells like a vengeful librarian? That's on the table too. And whilst the character creation screen is about as exciting as a wet sock and the faces look like they've been hit with a frying pan, once you're in, the build system does start to shine. You pick your class loosely through your choices, and as you bludgeon beasts and the undead, you'll rack up XP and get skill points. And for once in a game, the skill tree ain't just for show. Every point I slapped into a stat actually did something. I switched early game from a bog standard melee class to a full blown mage, and I ain't talking Harry Potter, I'm talking summon fire and melt your face levels of magic. Every point into mana made me stronger, every perk added more chaos. Where I could only summon one skeleton, the next minute I'm summoning 3 of the buggers. But here's the thing, all that tasty build potential gets slapped down by how the combat actually feels. See, the reason I swapped out my class was simple. The melee combat just felt off, like properly off. Swings were slow, clunky, and drained my stamina with ease. Every hit felt like I was waving a soggy baguette at a demon and hoping for the best. Now, I'm no stranger to a tough game, but this was brutal. One-on-one was doable if you had the patience of a monk, but the minute 2 or 3 enemies turned up, I was getting absolutely pulverised. I'm talking full medieval beatdown, and don't even get me started on the parry system. It's there somewhere, but good luck landing it unless you've got the reaction time of a caffeinated squirrel. Early on, the game absolutely battered me. I remember in literally the first few minutes, around 3 undead folks barged out a cell door and came for me, so I just ran Usain Bolt style for the exit, even though I wanted to explore more. Tainted Grail on normal difficulty feels like going to a knife fight with a Fisher-Price kitchen set. One particular quest had me facing off against a boss in a set-piece encounter. I thought, right then, let's test my mettle. Wham! Dead. One hit, over and over again, like I was stuck in some medieval Groundhog Day. After the 5th reload, I said sod it. I didn't fight him, I joined him. I chose the quest option that led me down a totally different path. In the end, I did what any desperate soul would do. I embraced the ancient art of cheesing. I'd run in, swing once like I meant it, then leg it onto a conveniently placed rock where the enemies just stood below, fuming and confused as their AI was unable to comprehend the 1-foot ledge that lay before them. Slash, climb, repeat. It wasn't elegant, it wasn't noble, but it bloody worked. I fought like Todd Howard himself had possessed me, whispering, if it ain't broke, exploit it. But then salvation, I swapped to the mage class and suddenly the game turned into a firework display. Fireballs flinging, ice spells freezing enemies in place, leeching the life out of foes, corpses detonating and undead minions summoned like I was running some paranormal sweatshop. Now this felt like where all the effort had gone. The mage class was tight, powerful and downright fun. But even then, the cheese still came back, because when the odds were stacked, and they usually were when groups of enemies showed up, I had to resort to my tried and tested tactic. Climb something, break the AI, rain death from above. It ain't tactical, but it did the job. The AI's thick as mints and easy to outsmart once you get the rhythm. Now I will say, once you push past the 10-hour mark, something clicks. You've earned enough points, refined your build, and suddenly you're not getting slapped around like a training dummy on Casual Friday. The combat starts feeling fair, tough, yeah, but no longer the kind of brutal that makes you question your life choices. At that point, death still lurks, but it's no longer breathing down your neck after every wrong footstep. You've got tools, you've got tactics, and most importantly, you've got options. And that is when the game truly opens up. The frustration simmers down and the pacing starts to feel earned rather than punishing. My real gripe then is that first zone. That opening stretch doesn't pull any punches, it grabs you by the throat and dares you to keep going. And for some players, that's going to be a deal breaker. It's front loaded with pain, and not in a sexy Dark Soul kind of way, more like being locked in a pub toilet with a feral badger. Had the game eased into the difficulty curve instead of launching you into a meat grinder on day one, I reckon it's going to retain far more players. But make it through the fire and you'll find the reward waiting. Stronger builds, better balance, and a game that finally starts to feel like it's respecting your time. Now as for the general gameplay, colour me impressed. The main quest, it's more than serviceable, keeps the gears turning, gives you a reason to swing your sword or hurl the fireballs into the next poor bastard. But the real magic lies in the side quests, and no, I'm not talking kill 5 rats for Farmer Barry bollocks that we get so often. These side quests, they're varied, weird, and just the right level of grim. One minute I'm slaying a boss that looks like it crawled out of Satan's fridge, next I'm doing trials, and then I'm digging up graves like some necromantic loser. It never felt like I was stuck on a loop of rinse and repeat. Each one felt handcrafted, like someone actually gave a toss. And of course, there are guilds to join, all with their own moral dilemmas. And what I really appreciated was that your choices matter. Pick the wrong option in a dialogue tree, quest failed, sunshine, no takebacks. It's brutal but honest. Now these side quests aren't just flavour text either, they're essential for your progression. Completing them gives you the XP you desperately need to survive later zones, unless you fancy getting spanked repeatedly by over-leveled forest goblins. That said, your character's leveling pace is a bit sluggish. It wouldn't hurt to sprinkle in a bit more XP here and there, and yes, the old system is back. You do something enough times and it gets better. Jump enough and your agility goes up. Run enough and your athletics edges close to top level. Personally, I think that mechanic should have been buried with Oblivion, but hey, I know some of you out there love that train by spamming system. Say this, the lot of ya. Now let's talk loot, and Tainted Grail gets this mainly right. Every box, barrel, shelf or suspiciously unlocked chest is packed with goodies. Most of the time you'll be hoovering up food ingredients like a starving raccoon, and it ain't just filler because you use the food to cook meals that give proper buffs. We're talking big boy benefits, extra health, stamina boost or mana regen, and don't panic, this ain't some complicated system written by Chef Ramsay screaming at you. Instead, it's dead simple. You find a recipe, click the meal you want, and bosh, your ingredients are prepped, plated and served with all those ingredients taken from your bag. No faff, no flames, no crying over burnt venison. I suspect there are some cheeky secret recipes scattered about too, the kind the community will dig up and start posting YouTube videos like top 10 buff foods you're too stupid to find. You know the type. But I've got one gripe, and it's a light simmer rather than a full boil. These recipes, they're actually hard to come by early on, and that's a shame because a well cooked meal could have saved my ass from several embarrassing deaths and maybe alleviated that difficulty. And of course we've got the weapons and armour, the bread and butter of any decent RPG. You've got your usual gear progression here, basic rags for the peasant look, then slowly working your way up to the shinier, rarer stuff, the kind that makes you feel like you've earned the right to strut into a dungeon like you own the place. Stat wise, no complaints. Every bit of gear has its own bonuses, and there's enough variety to let you fine tune your build like a proper battlefield fashionista. Want to be a heavily armoured juggernaut? Go on, treat yourself. Prefer to float about in cloth robes with your nipples out casting magic? Knock yourself out, lad. What's more, you can fine tune your loot further, upgrading it, reducing its weight or attaching relics to it. So if you find something you like, you absolutely can get it to the A+ levels. But here's the rub. While the stats are doing the business, the look of the gear, bit of a letdown. I mean, come on, when I finally loot something tied to a boss type character after slogging through a death swamp, I expect it to look like it's been forged in hell. Instead, it looks like something I nicked from the local blacksmith's bargain bin. Basic, boring, bit limp, truth be told. So yeah, I'll give Oblivion the point on this one. Their gear had personality. You knew you were wielding something special, even if it looked like it belonged on a fantasy catwalk. Tainted Grail's gear just doesn't quite give you that same thrill visually, which is a shame because the rest of the world's oozing with style. And finally, on the gameplay section, let's chat about the other bits that keep you busy in Tainted Grail, the odds and sods, the gravy on the roast. Lockpickings here in the classic RPG fashion. You twist a lock just right and clunk, open sesame. It's nothing revolutionary, but it does the job, and there's a certain satisfaction in robbing a chest blind. Although, truth be told, given the emptier feel of some of these houses and towns, I don't think you'll ever get caught red-handed anyway. Then we've got mining, yeah, proper swinging a pickaxe to get the ores for upgrades and crafting. Also you can dig up treasures like crates and whatnot, and this ain't some afterthought either, it actually works. That's because you're never short of materials if you're willing to put the graft in. No handouts here, just honest dungeon labour. And honestly I rate that, makes the loot feel more earned, not just dumped in your lap like a loot box handjob. And then there's the nighttime stuff, which I won't spoil, but let's just say things get very weird after dark. It adds this extra layer of tension that turns every sunset into a subtle threat, and I bloody loved it. The good news is you can buy homes in Tainted Grail too, which can always give you a respite from the nastiness. Package it all together, quests, combat, mining, grave robbing and the mysterious goings on after sundown, and what you've got is a surprisingly robust gameplay loop, the kind that keeps dragging you back in for just one more quest until you realise it's 3 AM, you're out of healing potions and you've eaten all your in-game cheese like a panicked rodent. Graphically, Tainted Grail is a bit of a looker. This one's got style, proper cinematic flair. It proves good graphics ain't just about texture detail or polygon counts, it's about how it all comes together. The light, the landscape, the architecture, they all link arms to deliver a fantastic spectacle. Sure, we could nitpick and we will do so shortly, but when Tainted Grail wants to turn heads, it succeeds in so many ways. One standout moment for me, there's this massive lighthouse perched on a cliff. You stop, look out, and the whole city below just stretches into the distance, daring you to explore it. It's a proper smile at the screen like an idiot moment. And it's not just about the views, it's the mood. The colour grading, the lighting, the weather effects, fog rolling in like a hungover ghost, rain splattering down, springtime haze softening the edges of ruins. It all comes together to make Avalon feel like a real fantastical place. A Doom place, sure, but oozing with that style. Then you throw in the actual details from crates, tables, buildings, banners, fencing and all the rest, and you can tell this was a love affair of design, and the artists sure did themselves proud here. There's a lot to love in the world of Avalon until you start to look a little closer, that is. Because here's the sad bit, folks. For all its cinematic flair and brooding atmosphere, when you're playing at 4K like I am, you start noticing the cracks. I'm talking textures that look like they were pinched from a dusty GameCube disc. What this game desperately needs is a proper 4K texture pack, because once you start gawking at the scenery and start looking at the details, the moss, the stonework, the walls that stare back at you with all the charm of a wet flannel, it's painfully clear that a lot of the surfaces are blurry or low res and miss that tessellation or bumpiness to them. It's especially jarring in those early sections when you're surrounded by grey ruins and greenery that look more mushy than majestic. This is quite symbolic when you get to a cutscene that appears to have been recorded at 360p on someone's Nokia phone. And then there's the animations, janky, a bit buggy, and NPCs look like they've been chiselled out of leftover candle wax, and when you chat with them, yeah, you'll wish they didn't have faces, dead eyes, stiff necks, mouths that move like sock puppets in slow motion. Very budget theatre, all they need is a cardboard sword and a bottle of cheap wine. But the real kick in the codpiece, the lighting. It's just off. Interiors in particular feel like they've been lit by invisible IKEA lamps. Take this one simple scene. Lantern in the middle of the table, right? Only light source in this whole room. So logically, the corners of the room should be pitch black, full of spooky shadows and lurking nasties. But nope, it's like the whole place is glowing with the light of 1,000 suns. I don't know if it's poor ambient occlusion or some other dark magic, but nothing in this room feels rooted. No real shadows, no depth, just floaty objects in a bright brown box. And yes, we have the jank. I've had scenes that bemuse me. For example, this fella suddenly appeared from the sky and walked over a tree to get to me. This poor sod here was being tortured, and whilst I'm having a chinwag with him, the enemy in the background didn't care for my presence and walks around us. I've had bears get stuck in rocks, the undead ignoring the prison guards, and just general jankiness in battles as everyone has a brawl. Most of it made me laugh, truth be told, but a little extra polish here and there wouldn't go amiss. Now don't get me wrong, it ain't ugly, it's just inconsistent, and no, it ain't as pretty as the Oblivion Remaster, because in places Tainted Grail does look 5 to 10 years out of date, but I also get it. This ain't a AAA studio drowning in cash, it's a small team punching above their weight, and on that front, I'm still more impressed than I was disappointed. I'm just giving you lovely folks the no bollocks straight answer, that this world deserves extra polish, because underneath the jank, there's something genuinely beautiful here. Right then, let's talk sound, and I'll say it straight off the bat. Tainted Grail is an absolute belter in the audio department. From the sweeping score to the surprisingly solid voice work, this game doesn't just sound good, it feels like a proper fantasy epic. Let's start with that music, because that's one of its biggest weapons. All orchestral, all with that score that grabs you by the ears and drags you straight into Avalon, whether you're ready or not. You're galloping across the plains and suddenly the strings swell as you look across those epic views. Then just as you hit battle, in come the tribal drums, proper heartbeat racing stuff. It adds shades actually of Senua's Sacrifice, and I mean that in the best possible way. Now, I wouldn't say there's a main theme that will end up on your Spotify playlist next to Skyrim or Witcher 3, but if it weren't for the sheer brilliance of the Expedition 33 soundtrack dropping recently, I'd be arguing that this thing here is contender for best musical score of the year. Then we get to the voice acting, a known Achilles heel for many big RPGs, but here, pleasantly surprised. It's split in two really. You got the cutscene work with major characters and the day-to-day shenanigans. So, King Arthur and the like are voiced beautifully, big, boomy, dramatic deliveries with just the right amount of medieval menace, and the writing Gritty, grounded with no fluff, it helps to sell that serious, somber tone that I mentioned earlier. Now the everyday NPCs, they're not winning any Oscars, sure, but they're more than passable. You won't be cringing like you do when half the cast of a Bethesda game sounds like they're reading from a cereal box. Most of the writing here holds up, and none of it rips you out of the world, which is more than I can say for most RPGs that I've played. As for the sound effects, brilliant once again, especially if you're playing as a mage. Fireballs whoosh, ice shards crackle, corpses explode, skeletons creak. Mix that with enemies who grunt, shout and swing their axes with gusto, and every impact, sword, shield or spell has real meat behind it. Nothing sounds cheap, nothing sounds phoned in. Throw in the ambient sounds of rain, thunder or the wind swirling and you have a nice foundation for when the music stirs up. Honestly, there's not much to complain about here. Everything is working in harmony. All of it adds to an already rich, brooding atmosphere. It's proper immersive stuff. So when it came time to settle in on a score, I found myself staring down the barrel of the content creator's dilemma and the bloody mess that is the games press. Now, throughout this review I've mentioned the Oblivion Remaster, and not just to take cheap shots, it's because the comparisons are valid. Fantasy setting, similar combat, similar leveling, similar feel, and it dropped just weeks ago, and the gaming world lost its bloody mind over it. Glowing reviews, 9s and 10s thrown about like confetti at a wedding. But let's call it what it is. Mutton dressed as lamb. It's a 20-year-old relic, gutted up with some glitter and sold back to us at full whack. I gave it a 7/10, and in hindsight, I was probably being a bit generous. Now here's where the problem kicks in. Those same folks who handed out top marks to Oblivion Remastered, what the hell are they meant to do when they sit down and play Tainted Grail? Because I'll tell you now, there is no planet, no alternative dimension, no cursed Avalon timeline where Tainted Grail is worse than or even equal to Oblivion Remastered. It's better in nearly every single way. Yet it is still flawed. The combat's a bit crap, the NPCs are lifeless at times, and there's plenty of polish that can be done. So no, it ain't getting a 9 or 10 score for that reason. But as you lot know, I don't review based on hype or nostalgia. I try to review it fair, I try to review straight, and I believe in consistency. Because if we're going to hold AAA studios to high standards, then surely we owe the same to the little guys who are swinging with half the budget and none of the safety net. So here it is. Tainted Grail, The Fall of Avalon is what you actually wanted when you asked for an Oblivion remake. It's got fresh quests, deeper writing, incredible music, better atmosphere, and a combat system that, whilst flawed, is still better developed. This ain't just a walk down memory lane, it's a new road paved in blood, fog and ghostly happenings. If you want a remaster, go play the safe bet across the street. But if you want to feel that warm nostalgia buzz and dive into something fresh, raw and ambitious, Tainted Grail is exactly what you were after. You just didn't know it yet. Until next time, my lovelies, Reggie